Welcome back to a lifetime of Mafia tales. Today we continue our new series on Sal going to Lewisburg prison in 1974. Sal met mobsters from all different types of crime families. In today's video we discuss Sal going to prison and meeting Louis Inglese, also known as Fat Gigi. Louis was originally tied with the Purple Gang and would go on to be a member of the Lucchese crime family. Louis was also portrayed in the movie Bronx Tale. That shows you how much of a character he was. Louis was also a big time drug dealer as well. Please subscribe to our channel if you want to get more interviews like this. Also, please be sure to subscribe to our Patreon channel for more exclusive stories about Fat Gigi. And without further ado, let's get into this story. Good morning, Sal. How you doing this morning?
Good. We got a little change of clock.
I know.
Yeah. Today I'm sitting in Vegas visiting some friends, and I'm flashing back. Almost 50 years. So we can get to some of the guys that were in Lewisburg, the whole Mafia Row group, who was like a fraternity. And I'll answer all the questions you can come up with. That should be fun.
Yeah. And well, last week we have covered the guys that ran it, basically, that you'd met and you were introduced to them. You went into the prison block, Johnny Dio, Joe Armone, and then Poliverio. Yeah, so
right,
I mean, you went in there, you talked to these guys for a little bit, and then later there was a couple other characters that you had ran into.
Right.
Who were a couple of them, or that you met after?
I got to meet some of the guys from the Purple Gang. There was Johnny Echoes, there was Arnold Squitieri, and these were all guys that were doing, prison time for drugs, because the drugs came out of Harlem. I mean, you had to go to Harlem to get the good stuff, just like when Frank Lucas was dealing those drugs. And one of the guys who was most popular with all the guys in prison, because they knew him from the street, was this guy, Fat Gigi, Louis Inglese. And when I met the guy, I just talked, with him a few minutes, because I was there maybe a week or two. It was in the middle of July, late July of 74. And what happened was I saw him out in the yard one day just sitting there, and he would sit on a chair because he had this huge stomach. He reversed the chair and put the chair like in front of him and lean on it. If I was to do that here, I one time did a little rendition of who he was and how he spoke. And the thing about the guys from Harlem, they spoke different than the guys from Brooklyn, because they were very descriptive. They were quite loquacious. They were loud. And often he was the type of guy who'd be telling a little story and spit would be coming out of his mouth. He was a funny guy. So what he noticed, though, one day was I had this nice cigar and I was in the yard. It was like a Dunhill cigar. And he looked at me, and he knew my name was Lubats. Everybody called me Lubats in the prison. He goes, Lubats, where'd you get that cigar? That's how he talked. He was like a little bull. He was fat and funny. Where'd you get that cigar? So I said to him like a smart ass, I said, the left doesn't tell what the right is doing. If I tell you, everybody knows where I got the cigar. He said, oh, you're pretty clever with that. Come on, tell the truth. Where did you get that cigar? I said, I got a friend out on the farm. This guy, Frankie, on the farm, and his wife lives in Brooklyn. My wife meets her, and they drive up in one car to Lewisburg to come visit us. And then my wife gives Frankie's wife, Marie, like a half a dozen cigars, or 10, 12 cigars every time she comes up to visit. She'd come every 2 weeks. And I says, then Frankie's out on the farm. He comes in for lunch while they're working outside the prison or inside, whatever. And I meet him, and he gives me 5 or 6 cigars. So Fat Gigi says, wow, what I wouldn't do for a good Dunhill cigar. I said, hey, look, I'll get you one. It's over in my locker. I'll bring it to you tomorrow afternoon, because we're ready to go in for the count. Everybody goes in at 4:00 and out in the yard for the count. So the next day I put a cigar in my pocket, and I got another cigar. And in those days, you might smoke the cigar for 20 minutes, but you didn't throw it away. You put it out and you saved it for the next day. And so I went out to the yard, and I go, hey, Gigi, here. So I give him the cigar, and his eyes open. He goes, oh, my God. And I don't believe we had lighters. I mean, we had like matches, like the long stick matches, you know. And I struck my match and lit up my cigar, and I lit up his cigar. I said, "Tell me about your activities up there on Pleasant Avenue," because all those guys would talk about all the drugs and all the money they made, but he wasn't interested in talking about the drugs. Fat Gigi was interested in telling stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out he was a Yankee fan. And so I said, "So you are a Yankee fan?" "Yeah." I says, "Who's your favorite player over the years?" And he said, "Mickey Mantle." And I said, "What about, did you like all the pitchers the Yankees had, like Whitey Ford?" We're talking like the 50s. He said, "Well," he said, "I did, but my favorite pitcher was Catfish Hunter." I said, "Catfish Hunter?" He had come from the A's, the Oakland A's, to the Yankees, like in the big trade. He says, "I'll tell you a Catfish Hunter story." Okay. So I'm sitting there smoking the cigar. He says, "Well, it was like the summertime. Must have been, I don't know, it was the summer of maybe 70 or 71, whatever it was, because we're in 74 now. So it's a few years earlier." And he said, "I'm sitting out there. It's hot out. And all the guys that were in the club, you know, they left. Who went to the beach, who went wherever. I'm sitting by myself. And I'm looking at my watch, and I know the Yankee game's going to start in like 20 minutes. And I'm figuring, I don't want to take a cab up there." He goes, and I see this limousine parked across the street from the club they were hanging out. So he said, "I went over to the limousine. I tapped on the window." And I said, "What happened?" He says, "The guy was a limo driver." And I asked him, "Hey, is this limo for rent?" He said, "Oh, no." He said, the driver said, "It's for my boss. I have to sit here for a couple hours. And when he calls me, I have to go a few blocks and pick him up and take him wherever he wants to go." He said, "But I'm going to be sitting here for several hours," because he said, "Be ready at 6 or 7. It was like maybe 12, 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Damn.
He said, "You want to make a few bucks?" He said to the driver. The driver said, "What do I got to do?" He said, "Drive me to Yankee Stadium." So he's like on 109th Street up in Harlem, and he'll maybe 15, 20 minutes to get up to the stadium. So the guy says, yes. So he goes into the club, grabs a stack of money, sticks it in his pocket, he says. And this is the way he told the story. He said, I get in the back of the limousine, and I said to the guy, how much is it going to be to get to the stadium?" The guy said, "Oh, you can give me whatever you want." He said, "I reach in, I get like a handful of 20s. Because in those days, all the drug dealers would pass small bills over to the guys who were in the business. And then you had to get rid of the 20s and the 10s, convert them to hundreds. He said, "But I had a whole stack of money that particular day. One of the dealers brought me a shopping bag full of 20s. He said, "I reached over, I gave the guy a handful. I didn't even count the money. A handful of 20s. And the guy said, "Oh my God, thank you." So he takes him up to the stadium, and he says, "Well, look," he says to the limo driver, "I'm going to be right here on this street when I come out. If you're here, I'll pay you again to take me back, you know, to Harlem, where he was, 109th Street or wherever it was." So he goes in, he makes a bet. I guess he made a bet on the phone or something for the Yankees. And he goes in and Catfish pitches this great game. And he comes out, and the limousine guy is still there. And he goes up to the guy and he says, "Oh, thanks for waiting." He said, I won a nice bet. Take me back, to the club." Guy drives him back to the club, and he starts talking to him. He says, "Well, what do you do? Is this a full-time gig?" "Yeah, this is it." He said, "I've been doing this like 15, 20 years. I'm trying to save some money to buy my own car, like a limo." He goes to the guy, "Well, how much is a limo nowadays?" He's like 12, 15,000, whatever it was. Okay. So as he gets back to the club, wait a minute. He runs into the club. He grabs a whole bunch of money. I guess he counted it up, like 10, 15,000, whatever it was. He goes back. He shakes the guy's hand. He goes, "Here, this is your tip." And the guy looks at him like he's absolutely bizarre. He sees the stack of money. That'll get you your limousine,
Oh, God.
He's telling me this story in the yard of Lewisburg, out in the yard, and was smoking his cigars, and he's laughing. I go, "Did you always give away those big tips?" He said, "Yeah, it didn't mean anything." So I was probably making, 20, 30,000 a day.
Damn.
A day. So then he said to me, Ubats, you were in here for bank robbery. He said, I know you got a lot of balls, but you got to have more brains than balls now. I go, what does that mean? You can make a lot more money with a spoon and a strainer. He goes, like this, than a gun. I go, doing what? I knew what he was going to say. You can sell junk. You can sell heroin. He said, if you ever get out of here and I'm out there, you come see me and we'll get in business together. So we smoked a cigar, and like maybe every 2-3 days I'd give him another cigar and tell me another story. Some of the stories that he told me were like amazing what he did with money, because money was no object to Fat Gigi. And of course, like years later, he became like a legend because he was doing 56 years. And while I was there, he was doing the whole bit, 56 years. After I left, I heard they threw out his 40-year sentence. And I think he got out after 4 or 5 years because he was doing like 16 years. And of course, when he got out, he did more business and he became like a legend up there. Everybody knew him. I believe his character was used in Carlito's Way. And I think Chaz Palminteri took some of his personality and used it in Bronx Tale.
Yeah, I mean, that's insane that that they made these movies swordly loosely around his character, in the Carlito's Way, Sonny, or and then with the character Sonny. So I mean, that's cool that they were really able to do that and portray that. And so Fat Gigi, I mean, he was from Harlem, like you said. He was in the Purple Gang, and then eventually he went on to be with the Lucchese's. Is that what he was with?
I think so. Yeah. We never talk much about that. He was always there telling whimsical, kind of funny stories about the things he did, and he liked family life. He liked food. Of course, he was big, and he used to go up to Paulie's upstairs in Paulie's room where Johnny Dio, Paulie, and Joe Amon were, and they'd always give him extra food. Of course, I'm sure he was on the payroll with the priest. Everybody sent the priest money, got food, But he had a lot of visits, though. He had people coming to visit him all the time because he had so much money. He probably paid their way to get up there, friends, family. He was a very interesting guy. He was like the best storyteller, though. He really was.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely had to have been. I mean, just that one story alone is pretty interesting that he would do that. And then, I mean, that just goes to show how much money was being made with drugs and how much you were making and him. I mean, it's insane on how much, but I mean, he got a lot of time for it. And I mean, that goes against the whole thing again, the mafia not being involved with drugs. And he had to have been a part of one of the families. I think it was Genovese or either Lucchese, not for sure.
I think so. They all knew him, though. He was a legend. And of course, over the years, I mean, because I never once admitted to him that I was selling drugs. I never admitted that.
Oh yeah, so none of them guys in prison knew that you were involved with that. All these old timers, even the ones that confessed to you that they were dealing in the junk. Because like Joe Piney, he was dealing in it, and now Joe, this Fat Gigi, he was involved with it too, as we came to find out. Let's see, what else was your encounter and your relationship with him? I mean, was it from the beginning you were in there?
I think he was able to share the ins and outs of that whole business because he was involved at a time when there was, Frank Matthews, Nicky Barnes, and Frank Lucas. So they were all black guys that were heavyweights in that business. And so he was up in Harlem. They were up in Harlem. And you didn't really get any kind of good drugs unless you got it from that area. That's when it was in the 60s and the 70s there. So, and a lot of the guys like Angelo, they would listen to him because I don't believe Angelo was involved in any drugs while we were there in prison in 74. I think he got involved in the drugs after we got out of prison, which I got out in 75. He got out maybe 76, I think it was. Like 76 or 77. So Angelo might have learned a lot from guys that's how you learn. People think you go to jail, which they call the Department of Corrections. And in my mind, I always called it the Department of Connection.
Well, yeah, I mean, look who you're in there with, all these guys. Yeah. And especially Fat Gigi putting you up on some game back when. So go into some more detail with about Fat Gigi and like who, I mean, was he in the same prison block, the Mafia Row one?
Oh, he was in the same block. I think, oh, he might have been in the block, one block over or something like that. I think he was in an individual cell. And the Mafia Row, they didn't have individual cells there. They had rooms up there. So, but he was well known, well respected. They liked him. Anybody who made that kind of money always had a certain type of personality, and that's who he was. He was happy-go-lucky, and an interesting guy to talk with, because, he messed around with actresses. I mean, he paid off, heavyweight people in business. When you have that kind of money, you can do anything. I mean, I think he played the stock market, because he told me he had two or three different aliases. Because in those days, you could open a stock market account under a bogus name and a bogus social security, and there was no computers, no way to track it. And that's what you could do, because he was a gambler too. He, like most of these guys who made a lot of money with drugs, they were gamblers.
Damn. So what is like another story that he may have told you, or maybe you guys were playing cards, or just any kind of story like that you can speak on?
I think he told me that he was involved with a famous actress, and I don't want to mention her name, but he gave her $50,000 for the night. Spent $50,000 with him for one night. And of course, she was young and she was pretty. I'm not going to say her name because she was well known. But when you have that kind of money, that was a lot of money in the 70s, 50,000.
Yeah, that is. I mean, so he definitely was doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And
yeah.
I mean, after you said he got out of prison and he was still around doing his stuff, I mean, he probably went back to Harlem. So, I mean, you never ran into him on the street.
I never ran into him. All those guys that I did meet in prison, I rarely saw them, except for like Angelo. I'm trying to think who else I ran into. Most of those guys were with different crews and different parts of the city. But he played Pinochle with Chicken Phil Testa and Harry Riccobene, Harry the Hump Riccobene, and everybody knew each other back there in those days. I think Gigi got friendly with some of the Boston guys too, beside the Philadelphia guys, because he was so well known. I mean,
like the Patriarch family.
No, maybe. I think there was a guy named Larry Zanino or something up there in Boston. So they all knew each other. They all had respect for each other. I mean, when we got there, I think Hoffa had just left maybe a year or two before. Whitey Bulger had left there, Lewisburg, and Gotti had left there. So there was a lot of contacts with, popular guys that were well known back there. And that was a great place to be, inside Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary, which was, that was a serious, penitentiary for the government. I mean, it was a farm outside, and it was like a minimum security. But that was pretty well-known U.S. Federal Penitentiary, Lewisburg, and all kinds of people there. And Gigi, he was kind of a loner in there. He only spoke to so many people. He wasn't somebody that you could get close to easy, unless he felt comfortable.
How was he carrying himself in there? I mean, like with being in there for having that long stretch of time. I mean, he just like Johnny Dio, they were both in there for quite a while, and he wanted to, be at some kind of level, at the boss of the prison area. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they didn't jockey for pecking order in there.
No.
They were very polite to each other, just like that alley boy Persico. He was there, and they got to know each other, and nobody really, competed for image in there. Everybody was an individual. I mean, like Henry kissed up to Paulie in there, Henry Hill, and Johnny Dio. So he was like sort of like a gopher in prison, Henry. And he was doing drugs, and he was smuggling, and he worked in, like I said, in the kitchen, stealing the best cuts of meat. And he brought him upstairs to Paulie, and Paulie cooked up there. I mean, it was an interesting experience being in that penitentiary.
Well, how did the guards treat all the Mafia guys?
Well, they were very respectful. I mean, if you were connected to that group up there, the guards didn't bother you. They didn't hassle you, and it was interesting that they really pretty much gave in to Johnny Dio and Paulie Vario, because they had the power there.
Just through their connections. How do you think they got to these guards? Why do you think the guards listen?
Well, the guards were afraid that they could cause uprisings, and I think the warden stayed away from everybody. It was the assistant warden that Paulie Vario and Johnny Deal had a grip on, and of course, the priest probably sent the money to the assistant warden, so they got away with everything there. That's just the way it was. It was a very unusual, you know, place to be. But if you were Italian, you were inside the group, and that's the way it worked there.
Yeah. So I mean, with all that, the prison, it wasn't the terrible experience for the
No,
Italian guys. I mean, they were just
no.
having fun, playing games,
Yeah,
staying away
exactly.
from
Yeah.
all. I mean, were they mingling with the other groups of people in prison? I mean, or did they keep
Well,
them?
not really. I mean, the Italians just associated with Italians. They didn't even talk to the Hispanics, the Colombians, the blacks. They didn't even get along with those people. They had no interaction with them all. Although I think Polivario and Johnny Dio had one black guy who was like a killer, big, huge, muscular guy. I think his name was Wayne, if I remember. But he wouldn't come in the room. They would go meet him, and if they needed something to get done, if they needed somebody to be threatened, they used this one guy. I mean, so he was the heavy there.
He was the muscle.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I mean, with all these guys being in there, and I mean, for all of them, I mean, it's definitely like there's some kind of organized in there, like with all these mob guys, because with them being from all different families and getting along, I mean, they really came together as a group and not fought with each other
right,
and did all
right.
that. Because I think even with a lot of prison stories and stuff that guys that I've interviewed, like it don't matter what gang they're from or any hood or turf or whatever clique they may have been with, in there they go with the race, who they're close with, and that's
Right.
doesn't matter, man. They're
Yeah.
supposed to watch each other's back in there. So I mean, from what you saw, is that how it was too with the Italians? Like they all kind of
Yeah.
segregated.
Well, in prison, cash money was contraband. But Henry had a way of smuggling in all kinds of stuff, drugs, money. I think some of the drugs was wrapped in a bag and they had money inside the bag. And Henry was known, stick it up his ass and bring it in. That's how he smuggled it. His wife would come there, they'd bring that stuff in. I think a couple other guys were smuggling. So once they had cash inside the prison, and I'm sure the money orders that we had sent that priest, was converted into cash, and he would bring the cash into Paulie and Johnny Deal. I got to tell you that I remember going to the movie with Fat Gigi that summer. It might have been the following month or maybe September. Johnny Dio had this connection with Lions Club International. He did charity work. So when I say he did charity work, he would get money from like Fat Gigi, Paulie, and whatever, and donate the money to the Lions Club International, and they would bring in movies every month. And one of the most humorous, amazing things I ever experienced was we were going to a movie, and then I said to one or two of the guys, when it was Paulie, I don't remember, Angelo, what's playing tonight? He said, oh, this new movie with Steve McQueen, The Getaway. I go, The Getaway? Because I hadn't seen that on the street. I think while I was in, it might have came out, or in those days when a movie hit the theaters, that was the only place to see a movie. It might be in the theater 2-3 weeks. There was no television, no VHS, none of that. So the movie The Getaway was with Steve McQueen, Ali McGraw, and they had a good cast in there. And it was about this guy, a bank robber who was in prison, Steve McQueen in Texas. And they get him out, and when he gets out, and I identified with this storyline, he goes to meet, this Texas, hoodlum who had a gang, and they arranged to rob a bank. Well, the reason they were arranging to rob the bank is because this group of Texas, criminals had ripped off the bank. They were ripping off money out of the bank, like swindling the bank. And so the guy who set the thing up with Steve McQueen wanted to cover up the robbery they did. And so they hired Steve McQueen to go rob this bank of they said it was going to be like $1 million, but it turned out to be like 400,000. The reason that they robbed this bank was to cover up their own thefts. And that was cool because at the end of the movie, they get away and they go into Mexico. Steve McQueen pays, guy to buy a pickup off him for like $50,000. And he drives off into the sunset. Well, what was interesting about that, I had stories that, allowed me to think, well, if I could get information, I could pull off a robbery that would be similar to the getaway, which is a cover up of another theft. Well, it wasn't long after that, years later, that I pulled off a diamond robbery based on the story of the getaway. So I was thinking back my prison time, And of course, when you're in there, you're talking to other criminals about certain robberies and all. And two of the guys that I robbed banks with, they were older guys. I don't think I talked about them yet. But Fat Gigi knew them because they were in Alcatraz. And when they closed Alcatraz, these two bank robbers wound up in Lewisburg. And they were big storytellers. And so it's interesting that when I left, I actually got involved with a guy who owned a diamond company in Manhattan. And to cover up his thefts, he had me rob a diamond dealer. And I'll talk about that one of these days. It was very similar to the getaway thing because he wanted to cover up his thefts in the diamond business, his own company. So I always related back to the Lewisburg movie that we saw. And I always said to others, I can't believe the warden let the getaway play in the penitentiary when the two thieves, the two robbers, get away with the money and everything. I mean, what a thing to show a bunch of criminals.
Yeah, no, really. Well, I mean, because that's just like, doesn't mean we really use it as an educational experience. Like, why would they show them? Because you went on and did it. It gets you really thinking on, oh, well, they did that. Maybe I could do something similar. And then, sure as hell,
you listen to the guys that are in prison. A lot of the stories and crimes that they were involved in, if you would have tweaked them a certain way, they could have got away with it, but they didn't. So I was always listening and thinking, oh, what if I did such and such when I get out? Of course, when I got out of prison, I wasn't much interested in doing more robberies because I didn't have Foxy as a partner to steal. And of course, I did know the difference between the drug business, which Fat Gigi talked about. And he was the one that told me it's a boring business. It's so boring. You exchange this bag of dope for a bag of money. And I knew that. And I always got excited about robberies because you had to be clever. It was almost like writing and directing a movie, a robbery, And so, and he was interested in the bank robberies that I did. So I would share bank robbery stories with Fat Gigi, and he'd tell me some of the stories he was involved in. With the guys in the drug business, but there was far more money in drugs than it was in any robberies.
What is another interesting story that he had told you that you can recall well?
Oh, geez. I don't know. I got to think about that. He was just a clever guy. And he was always talking about the same juggling that he had to do because they knew he was a drug dealer up there. And then, Tony Salerno had a club up there too. And so they had to make believe, that they weren't involved in the drug business. So he was a pretty good actor, Fat Gigi. He was a good actor. So I kind of learned a lot from him because I was only, 29 years old when I was in prison with him.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely was. What age was he at that time?
Well, I want to say he was like 40-ish, maybe.
And you would have been like 20s going into there?
I was 29, so he was about 10 years older, yeah. But there was some stuff written about him, and a lot of people talked about him. Maybe there's something online that people remember about him, but he was a very charismatic guy.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't
personality.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't really, because you look online. I mean, there's no videos made about him yet or anything.
Right.
So we're going to be the first ones to, sit here and do this whole video on him and shine some light on this guy, this character of who he was and what you experienced with him. Because there's a lot of pictures of him and stuff and a few little things written about him, but this will bring some more light, some inside stories about who he really was, I suppose, from what you understood.
He was very cavalier. I mean, his whole personality was a jokester. He just didn't care. He wanted to laugh. He was easygoing. And I never really heard much about a violent side of him. I didn't see him as a violent guy. I just saw him as a manipulative drug dealer who knew the business. And I never talked about where he got the drugs or anything like that. But he was already convicted, and he didn't deny that he was a good drug dealer. He said, I had the customers. So I guess he had a bunch of customers who bought him shopping bags full of money. And he actually had one or two guys who would sit there and count the money.
All day.
Got it. Yeah. Well,
that was just their job.
Yeah. If you're sitting down at a table counting 200,000, just to organize it and put it in rubber bands to take you 2 hours.
Oh
people don't realize that,
Takes a lot of time. No money counters and shit back then, or what?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if he had a money counter. I don't know. Not like Scarface. I don't think he did it the old-fashioned way.
Well, did he ever run any illegal operations in the prison or anything like that?
No, not that I know. He didn't need to do that. Everybody loved the guy. I mean, if he asked something from somebody, and he really rarely did, they would do it for him because they just had this great personality, And of course, he was the best storyteller. He really was.
Yeah, I would imagine so. And I mean, for the next week that we're going to cover as well, we're going to go into these two guys, Alley Boy Persico and Vinny Alloy.
Vinny Alloy, yeah, he was the son of Buster Alloy, and they were deeply entrenched in the Colombo family. Over the years, I think Buster, his dad, was originally with the Profaci crew, which turned into the Colombos, and they were interesting guys. I know Vinny Alloy was an excellent handball player. He'd be out there every day playing handball. So I understand. I read that he's 90 years old, living in Florida. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, man, he's really not one of the few that are still alive from those Lewisburg prison days. So
yeah,
I think so. Yeah, I mean, that's what people, we'll give them a teaser. For next week we'll be covering those two guys, when Sal met them, and we're trying to give a good storyline for everyone. When we talked about Johnny Dio, Joe Armone, and then Poliverio, and then today we talked about Fat Gigi, and then the next one we'll go into these guys. So I mean, that's what you guys have to look forward to for our next one. And
good.
I mean, this will be the next one will be a really interesting one as well, because Sal was with the Colombos, and we can talk about what their thoughts were on Sal and all that. So,
well, one of the things I do remember about Fat Gigi, he had a terrible dislike of attorneys. And I believe he was involved with this Gino Galena attorney who was, popular, almost famous in the early 70s, late 60s. And maybe we'll cover what happened to him with a group of attorneys. That's another storylines that I want to cover. The Jerry Shagel, the Mike Corio, the Gino Galena, the Bruce Cutler, all these attorneys, Jack Ezeroff. These were very famous attorneys that represented mostly Italian guys. So I know that Gigi had no respect at all for attorneys. He actually called them parasites. Really? I remember him saying to me, what person beside an attorney can you think of that lives off other people's miseries? And he didn't like attorneys, So
a coroner.
Yeah, we'll talk. Right.
No, the people that run those funerals, homes and stuff.
Yeah, right. Sort of like a funeral director. Yeah.
Yeah, so they make their money off that. Yeah. No, I see what you mean. That's fun.
Yeah.
But, with him as well, I mean, you talk about him being a really clever guy, really smart with how, he told you not to do bank robberies, just do the boring stuff, do the drug dealing. But I mean, really, what is something people can learn from this guy? Like what that, a takeaway to his mistakes?
I think he was at the right place at the right time. Remember, there was no electronic surveillance in the 60s and 70s, very little. I believe he got convicted by maybe a witness or something. I don't believe in 1969, 70, 71 that they had any electronic recordings, and there was very few informants. So Fat Gigi lived in an easygoing time where you could do a drug business and not worry about getting set up, So that was the time. I don't believe this. I'm sure there's a way to make some money. I don't know anything about drugs today, but for sure, you're fighting a losing battle with the government, because of all their technology today.
Yeah, and I mean, even in his case too, he did get busted. He did, what'd you say, 16 years? Oh, what did he end up getting?
I know he got his 40-year sentence thrown out. So he
Yes.
probably did a couple, 4, 5, 6 years, something like that. When he got out, I heard he lived a quiet life. How much money he had, who knows? Because in those days, he was a smart enough guy to have offshore money.
So yeah,
Yeah.
he knew what to do. But I mean, for people watching this stuff, I mean, really, it's to go down that path and stuff, it's not good because, I mean, look what he could have got involved with, the different other stuff. I mean, you said he had a great personality, he was funny,
Yeah.
he was telling stories and stuff. Who knows what he could have been, but
Yeah.
definitely chose the wrong.
I really think he could have been a comedian. And that's how funny he was. He was a very funny guy.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's a good storyteller, funny and all that, but who knows, man? I mean, he did his own thing and ended up going to prison and stuff. So I don't know. Today, like you said, it's a never-ending battle with the government as well. So stay away from it. Well, thank you everyone for watching. Me and Sal are going to go over to Patreon and we're going to follow up on some stories. So thank you for watching. And of course, we'll see you on the next one. That wraps up today's story about Sal going to Lewisburg prison in 1974 and meeting Louis Inglese, also known as Fat Gigi. The Lucchese crime family had all kinds of different characters. We will continue to cover the rest of the characters that were in this prison week after week. We are working to get this made into a movie. Sal's experiences in Lewisburg prison with all these different mobsters. Please comment any key takeaways that you got from this interview. Please share it with anyone that you think will enjoy this type of content. If you would like to support our podcast, we got a few items that you can purchase. All of these items can be found in the video description below. The first one is Sal's book, The Sinatra Club. You can get this personally autographed by Sal. The next one in our hottest seller is the 1972 Sinatra Club playing cards. Back in Sal's Mafia days, he opened up his own social club named the Sinatra Club. Many mobsters would come to this club, even when there were all-out wars going on between different families. They would come to the Sinatra Club and play cards. Some of the mobsters that played with these cards were John Gotti, Dominic Cataldo, Tommy DeSimone, Foxy, Jimmy Burke, Willie Boy Johnson, Tony Roach, Henry Hill, Joe DeFede, Danny Fatico, Gene Gotti, Peter Gotti, Joey Scopo, and many more. We're selling each one of these cards for $10 a piece. These cards are limited, we only got 1,000 of them. The next item is an autographed picture of Sal from his Mafia days. Another item is the Dinner with the Mobster card. You can get this autographed as well. This was an event that Sal had hosted in the past. We also got the Ubot's production ticket from an event that Sal had hosted. This is also autographed. The last item we got to offer is Sal's book, The Sins of the Father. Again, you can find all these items in the video description below. Please be sure to subscribe to our Patreon channel if you want to continue to get more exclusive stories. And also please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to continue to get more videos from us. Thank you again so much for watching, and of course, we'll see you on the next one.